The next level of organization is the ecosystem. An ecosystem is defined as the living and non-living parts of the environment. So the living parts of the environment would include all organisms, so that would be plants and animals and bacteria. The non-living parts of the environment, the physical environment, would include topography, would include the soil, water. And what we're going to focus on are what are called limiting factors. And a limiting factor is any abiotic or biotic factor that is limiting a population's growth. And usually when we're talking about a limiting factor, we're talking about a level of an environmental factor, living or non-living, that has gone beyond normals or averages and is, in most cases, negatively impacting a population's growth. So the living factors are called biotic factors. So we know that bio means life or living. And examples of those are people, plants. A lot of people forget about plants as being living, like this little pineapple plant. And yes, they grow from the ground. Or insects, or piranha, or cats and dogs. Now, when we're talking about limiting factors, some limiting factors are called density dependent. And density dependent limiting factors depend on population density. So population density matters. So there will be an increasing effect of the limiting factor with population density. And the two examples that I have here are extremes. So here's a picture on the left of New York City. So you can see that I'm there in Times Square. I can't get a good picture without this man's forehead and a bunch of other heads in the picture, which this is the way it used to look. It doesn't look like that right now. And we know why it doesn't. And then over here in Abingdon, I know that there's people there, but the only evidence I have of that is the cars. So when you're talking about density independent factors, or I mean density dependent factors that are going to have an increasing effect with population density, one of those big ones is diseases, and that's the big one that we've all encountered. And we've seen how this density dependent factors work. So in a place that is very densely populated, like New York City, that we've seen a whole lot more people with the coronavirus. But then you come and you look at a place like Abington, you look at Washington County, to where people are less densely populated, then you have less spread. So there is a benefit living in less dense populations, living in rural America, and we're seeing that right now. Some other things that we're talking about, these are mostly biotic factors, could be overcrowding, which leads to stresses, which can affect organisms mentally and physically. So it can affect their physiology. So if you look at all these birds here, at first glance, you might have looked at this picture and thought, that's a bunch of rocks. Well, it's a bunch of birds. Um, it can increase competition for resources. And usually the strong are the ones that are going to get the resources. The weak, the young, and the old are the ones that are not going to get the resources and are not going to make it. Parasites, like the ticks here, or lice. So always think about school settings. We don't have to worry about it that much in high school, but um, little kids in elementary school, they don't really have much of an idea about boundaries, my bubble, your bubble. So I think about, in classrooms and how something like lice could be passed in a classroom that is more densely populated than less densely populated. Then next we have the abiotic factors, the non-living factors. So abiotic, again, A means not nor without, and bio is life, so it's without life. So we could be talking about weather events, we could be talking about water, temperature. Got a couple pictures here from Hawaii. This is from the Volcano National Park. So this is the volcano. These are craters. So this is a crater rim. We can see that there's still steam vents. So there's active steam coming up out of the ground. We could see these other mountain ranges. So this is on the island of Oahu. And we can see how kind of sharp these mountain ranges are. So that could affect weather systems that could affect migration, but all of these are non-living factors. Now, when it comes to looking at an abiotic factor as a limiting factor, these are referred to as density independent. And what that means is population density is not a factor here, that all populations are going to be affected, and how dense they are just does not matter. So, natural disasters would be an example. So, we've had tornadoes in this area, so it doesn't matter if the tornadoes are in Washington County, Virginia, or if they're in Nashville, the biological impact is going to be equally devastating. Temperature, sunlight, human activities like damming of rivers, forest deforestation, um, temperatures. I think about temperatures that usually every summer you hear about heat waves and people succumbing to that. And it doesn't matter how many people there are, a heat wave is going to impact them equally. So if you look at this picture here of our ecosystem, we can look separately at the biotic factors from the abiotic factors. And when you put both of those together, you have a picture of your ecosystem, but it takes both. It takes the living and the non-living.